What happened on Sunday cannot be summed up by a simple explanation. To say that the result was solely due to an opposing quarterback playing poorly is to completely ignore what the film reveals. A reanalysis of the game makes it clear that two factors coexisted simultaneously: an extremely weak performance from the Houston offense and a Patriots defense that performed at a dominant level. Both things are true, and any honest reading of the matchup must start from this point. Before we continue, if you enjoy in-depth analyses like this one, please like, subscribe to the channel, and participate in the comments. This helps the content reach more fans and keeps this type of detailed analysis coming to you. Upon reviewing each snap, the initial impression intensifies. The Texans quarterback had one of the worst performances of his career. In the All-22 selection, he appeared uncomfortable from the start, with restless feet in the pocket, inaccurate throws, and questionable decisions. The feeling is of a player who couldn't process what he was seeing on the field. This wasn't an isolated mistake or a specific bad moment in the game. It was a consistent pattern throughout the entire match. The performance was poor in real time and appeared even worse when observed calmly. However, stopping at that conclusion would be superficial. The Patriots defense played a central role in everything that happened. The pressure was continuous, varied, and intentional. The defensive plan was built to take away the comfort of the pocket and force quick decisions. There were situations with only 3 men in the pass rush and 8 players in coverage, alternating with 4 traditional pass rushers, formations with 5 players on the line, blitzes by linebackers and defensive backs, as well as aggressive cover zero calls. Not all of them worked, and the risk was evident, as in the 2 cover zero calls in the first half that failed, including the only touchdown conceded by the defense. Still, the message was clear. The priority was to accelerate the mental clock of the opposing quarterback. This approach didn't come out of nowhere. History showed that with a clean pocket, the opposing quarterback was capable of executing any throw. Under pressure, however, he put the ball at risk. The Patriots defense exploited exactly this weakness. The blitz rate was extremely high and had a direct impact on the outcome. Most of the opposing offense's dangerous plays came precisely when there was extra pressure. Under pressure, production plummeted, with very few yards, interceptions, and sacks accumulated. The statistical impact was severe, reflected in advanced numbers that show a complete collapse of offensive efficiency. The pressure didn't just come from the outside. The interior of the defensive line played a decisive role. The defenders repeatedly pushed the pocket back, preventing the quarterback from having space to move up and throw. This created a domino effect. Even when there wasn't a sack, the discomfort was visible. The quarterback started throwing hastily, off base, and into increasingly tight windows. This is another key aspect of the defensive performance. The coverage worked in sync with the pressure. Almost a third of the pass attempts occurred in extremely tight windows, a very rare statistic in playoff games. The combination of pocket pressure and disciplined coverage forced errors, resulted in turnovers, and killed any attempt at offensive rhythm. The outcome was historic in terms of defensive impact, with multiple turnovers, defensive scoring, and total control of the opponent's running game. In the backline, there were moments of instability, but also decisive plays. Penalties were awarded, receptions were conceded, but this was accompanied by interceptions, critical breakups, and important tackles. The defense managed to improve throughout the game, especially in the second half when control became even more evident. The opponent had extreme difficulties in the red zone and practically couldn't run with the ball, even after adjusting their offensive formation. While the defense delivered a dominant performance, the Patriots' offense experienced a game of contrasts. The offensive line had a clear and localized problem. One of the tackles performed far below expectations, accumulating pressures, sacks, and a strip sack that could have completely changed the game. The emotional impact of this was evident after the game. The player knew he had failed, and this was clear both in his body language and subsequent statements. At the same time, it's important to separate the individual from the collective. The other 4 offensive linemen performed solidly against one of the strongest defensive fronts in the league. The overall pressure level suffered by the quarterback was low, which shows that the perception of line collapse doesn't reflect the full reality of the game. At times, there was a lack of help with blocking, and at other times, offensive decisions left the tackle in unfavorable one-on-one situations. The Patriots quarterback had an inconsistent performance. There were moments of indecision, especially when no route developed as expected. On a deep play in his own field, the best decision would have been simply to get rid of the ball, but the hesitation almost resulted in disaster. In another crucial situation in the fourth quarter, a receiver was completely open to convert an important third down, but the pass didn't go off. There were also errors in accuracy on intermediate routes. On the other hand, there were high-level plays, scrambles on third downs, difficult throws converted, and enough control to keep the offense functional against an aggressive defense. Considering the pressure suffered on the left side of the line and the level of the opponent, the performance was acceptable, with the clear exception of ball security, which needs to be corrected. The receivers in turn took advantage of the opportunities. There were touchdowns, forced defensive interference, and important blocks in the running game at a time when the objective was to control the clock and close out the game. Each contribution weighed on the final result. The second half of the game only confirmed what had been unfolding from the start. The Patriots' defense not only maintained its level, but increased its control. The opposing offense attempted adjustments, including reinforcing the offensive line with heavier formations, but the result was the same. The running game was neutralized, attempts to gain momentum failed, and each down seemed more difficult than the last. The success rate on rushes was extremely low, and the inability to produce yards in predictable situations left the offense stuck on long third downs. This scenario further exposed the opposing quarterback. With the pocket collapsing rapidly and no real threats in the running game, the reads became predictable. The Patriots' defense continued forcing passes into tight coverage, maintaining the pattern of small windows and rush decisions. The result was a sequence of unproductive plays, forced errors, and turnovers that defined the course of the game. In playoff games, this type of defensive control is usually decisive. The advanced statistics reinforce what the video already shows. The opponent's offensive production plummeted in terms of EPA, especially when there was pressure in the pocket. The plays with the greatest negative impact occurred precisely in these situations, highlighting how the blitz and the variety of defensive calls were decisive. The defense managed to combine aggressiveness and discipline, something rare in high-pressure games. In the back line, the execution remained consistent. There was recovery after occasional errors, good communication, and a constant presence around the ball. The decisive plays came at the right moments, especially in red zone situations where the opponent clearly struggled. Limiting short opportunities and forcing quick decisions was a fundamental part of the plan, and the execution confirmed this. Meanwhile, the Patriots' offense sought to manage the game. The offensive line continued to exhibit the same contrast observed at the beginning. The individual problem persisted, but it didn't contaminate the collective performance. Overall, the protection was sufficient to allow the offensive plan to move forward. When pressure did occur, it came mostly from a specific point, which made it easier to read what needed adjusting. The quarterback showed awareness of this throughout the game, even though he didn't always make the best decisions. Indecision reappeared at crucial moments, whether holding on to the ball for too long or failing to activate open targets. His reading of the pressure was also inconsistent, something the player himself acknowledged after the game. His difficulty in getting up into the pocket was evident, especially when tackles tried to push pass rushers out of the play. Even so, there was enough control to prevent these isolated errors from changing the outcome. The performance had its ups and downs, but also showed the ability to respond. In third down situations, there was mobility, courage to run when necessary, and difficult passes completed under pressure. Given the context of the game and the defense faced, the performance was functional, albeit far from ideal. Ball security remains the primary point of concern. In games of this level, a single mistake can be decisive, and the offense came close to that on more than one occasion. The difference is that this time, the defense was dominant enough to compensate for those errors. In a different scenario, the cost could have been higher. The receivers remained efficient until the end. They capitalized on opportunities, contributed touchdowns, and actively participated in the off-ball play. Blocks late in the game were crucial in controlling the clock and sealing the victory. Small details such as forced defensive interference and well-executed routes also had a direct impact on the outcome. At the final whistle, the game's picture was complete. The Patriots' defense delivered a historic performance based on constant pressure, well-distributed blitzes, tight coverage, and total control of the running game. The turnovers were not accidents, but a direct consequence of a well-executed plan. The offense, despite its flaws, did enough, supported by an offensive line that functioned better than initial perception suggested and by a quarterback who, even when inconsistent, found ways to contribute. In playoff games, this type of victory often defines identities: defensive control, situational dominance, and the ability to overcome one's own mistakes. That's exactly what was seen on the field.